There are 95 Academy Awards for Best Picture, and I'm about to share my thoughts, or at least brief thoughts, on every single one of them. Hey everyone, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes, well, really, a lot more than a few minutes of your time in this particular case with me. So today we are going to be reviewing briefly every single movie that won the Best Picture Oscar for the Academy Awards. Now, technically I already did this. I did the 95 Days of Oscar, in which I reviewed a Best Picture winner briefly as a short every single day. But we are going to be taking all of those videos, sans opening and closing for most of them, and we are going to put them in one mega video with new graphics so that you can see exactly what I think of all of them in a row if you so choose. So grab a snack and a drink. It's going to be a long one, and if you stick through the whole thing, I definitely appreciate it. And of course, please forgive the changing of the shirts, the growing and ungrowing of facial hair. That's just kind of some of the fun quirkiness of YouTube. And I will see you at the end for, well, the wrap-up. So see you there. Hey everyone, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and today we are starting our 95 Days of Oscar. This is where we are going to talk about every movie that won Best Picture up to the day that the newest Academy Award-winning movie is unveiled. So some of these might not necessarily be good, but the very first movie that won Best Picture was Wings. This is a very good one, directed by, who's the director? It doesn't say. It doesn't say who directed this. But anyway, Wings is the first, and for a long time, only silent film to win Best Picture. This set the template of what an Oscar movie would be. You know, epic scenes, romance, engaging story, fascinating characters. I love Wings. I don't think you can stream this anywhere. I think you gotta buy it. But this is history right here, so I highly recommend Wings. It is very, very good. And the second movie that won Best Picture is The Broadway Melody. I don't like this one very much. This was advertised at first, all singing, all dancing, all talking musical of some sort, and it's basically the first musical that won Best Picture, even though it doesn't quite follow the typical musical norms. It follows two girls who want to be stars on stage, and they become stars on stage, and it's kind of boring, if we're being frank and honest with each other. But it won Best Picture, that's why we are talking about it, so I would like to know whether you like this movie or not in the comment section below. Quiet on the Western Front, first war film to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. I like this movie. I like the pacing, I love the action, I love how this was really one of the earliest movies that questioned the humanity of war. The final shot is absolutely brilliant. It is wonderful. So, as one of the earliest Best Picture winners, this is a very good one. Highly recommend it. I would like to know, though, whether you like it or not. Cimarron. This is not a good movie. I'm sorry, folks. I know we like to do the movie recommendation of the day, but not all Oscar winners were good, and this is a prime example of a bad one. It seems like on paper it should work. Epic action sequences, period piece, forbidden romance, everything. It's just not very good. It's very uninteresting. It's very long. It's, unfortunately, by today's standards, got a lot of negative stereotypes, which I don't personally object to, understanding the time period. But the movie has to be good enough to get me to overlook those stereotypes. And this one is nowhere near as good. So I think this is actually a movie recommendation of the day that's a skip, but I do want to know whether you like it or not. It's Grand Hotel. I believe this is the only movie in Oscar history to win one award. Best Picture. Well, not only did it just win one award, it was also nominated for one award. Best Picture. It didn't get a director nomination. It did not get an acting nomination, even though there is an all-star cast for the time in this film. So, how is the movie? Actually, it's pretty good. It's very interesting how all these people are in a hotel and how their lives touch one another in ways that they do not expect it to be touched. It's not great, but it is very, very enjoyable, and definitely not a terrible Best Picture winner by any means. So if you haven't seen this, it actually is a movie recommendation. Cavalcade. This movie almost was lost. Despite winning Best Picture, this was not available for years. Now it has been saved, it's been restored, it's on DVD and Blu-ray, thank goodness. It follows a family whose lives are changed by generations going through major world events. It's kind of boring, not gonna lie. They made movies about this later on, also about generations going through time that were far more interesting. But for the time, this was pretty epic. Also, fun fact, this was the first movie to involve the Titanic that won Best Picture. Other one, way more famous, we'll be talking about much farther down the road. Happened one night. This is the first of only 3 movies to win the Oscar Grand Slam. Picture, director, actor, actress, and one of the screenplay nominations. And this movie is fantastic. It is one of the ultimate romantic comedies of all time. Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert have such great chemistry. It has some very iconic scenes that you've seen. Whether or not you've even seen the movie, you've seen other movies and shows reference them. This is a wonderful one. This one cannot come highly recommended enough. Got another rarity. We have a movie, Mutiny on the Bounty, that only won a single Academy Award, which was Best Picture, although unlike Grand Hotel, this one got nominated for quite a few more. Interestingly about this case, by the way, the Oscar is built in, but the Best Picture thing has a sticker on it. I don't know why that's the case. But anyway, definitely like this one. Clark Gable, another Clark Gable movie, what do you know, is wonderful, and Charles Laughton is deliciously evil and easy to hate. This is a fun movie. It has not felt like it's aged very much, unlike some of these other movies we've been talking about recently. Definitely recommend this one. I believe it is on HBO Max, but check the Just Watch app just to make sure. The Great Ziegfeld. I don't like this one at all. Not at all. So this is not a movie recommendation unless you just want to see all the best pictures. This is more than 3 hours long. It's about a showman tycoon. It does have some impressive dance sequences, but yeah, this was what counted for epic back then. It might be worth watching a little bit just to see what epic looked like at the time, but this has not aged very well. I think you can stream on HBO Max right now. I don't really recommend it. But if you've seen it, I would like to know what you think about it. The Life of Emile Zola. This is a very good movie, in my opinion, about an author who defends a friend in court over crime his friend claimed he did not commit. It feels a little old, the court sequences don't have the finesse that some of the later, more modern-day films would have. But it was a pretty good early attempt, and Paul Mooney is really good as the title character. So I would definitely recommend this one. I believe it is on HBO Max, although check your Just Watch app just to make sure. I'd like to know, if you've seen this, do you like Can't Take It With You by Frank Capra? It also starred Jimmy Stewart. This was one of the first of many awards that Frank Capra would win. Now, I love Frank Capra. I adore Frank Capra. This is not one of his best films. I think it's a little too, maybe it's a little too quirky. Characters act in ways I just don't think they would ever act like in real life, even in the 30s. So, I definitely prefer things like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, It's a Wonderful Life. I think those are much better movies. But this did win Best Picture, hence why it is part of 95 Days of Oscar. But I just didn't care for it that much. And for a big movie, we have a big set. Gone with the Wind. Oh, look at that set. Look at that limited edition set. This is actually kind of heavy to hold. So anyway, Gone with the Wind, considered one of the greatest films of all time, and I wholeheartedly agree. You do not see a lot of movies made these days. I'm not talking about the politics of it, which obviously come from a different time period, but you rarely see movies of this ambition and this scope. Even decades later, Gone with the Wind holds a candle to some of the big blockbusters in terms of visual scope, length, and depth. The characters are wonderfully complex. It spans many years. The visuals are still a sight to behold, and it's easily a movie recommendation of the day. Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca. This is an excellent movie. It's Alfred Hitchcock's only Best Picture win. Wrongfully, in my opinion, but hey, it's a good one, about a woman who gets married to a rich guy and finds that the house and everything is overshadowed by his deceased wife named Rebecca. And can she ever actually fully become her own woman in this house that has so many of her memories around? It is supremely suspenseful, wonderfully acted, and with a great ending that will have you go, oh my gosh. Alfred Hitchcock was really good at this. How Green Was My Valley. Now, this is a very good movie about the tragedies and triumphs of a family in a mining town. It is actually very good. You might have heard some hate about this, though, and the reason it gets a lot of hate is because it won Best Picture over the much better Citizen Kane. So that's why this movie gets a lot of hate. But taken on its own terms, it's a very good movie and easily qualifies for a movie recommendation of the day, in addition to being part of 95 Days of Oscar. So, have you seen it? Do you agree that it is probably unfairly maligned because of the competition it beat? I'd love to know, so comment below. Mrs. Miniver. This is, I believe, a William Wyler film. Yes, this is a William Wyler film. This is about a woman basically trying to get her family through World War II. This movie was made while the war was going on, and when they were trying to prop up people's enthusiasm to support the war. You don't really see too many movies like this anymore because Hollywood's more interested in tearing down reasons we get into war rather than supporting us when we do get into wars. I'm not going to get into why that is here, but either way, it should be noted this is a propaganda piece, but it is a very good one. You can see why movies like this kind of uplifted the nation. It is easily a movie recommendation of the day, but I am curious, if you have seen it, do you like it, or do you think the propaganda nature just got to be too much? Casablanca, one of the greatest films ever made. You know this movie. You've probably seen it. If you haven't seen it, unfortunately you probably have because the ending has been referenced by so many people. But still, if you haven't seen it, this is a great one. So many famous lines of dialogue, so many iconic scenes. Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, what wonderful chemistry. An ending that would truly be shocking if it wasn't so dang popular. This did win Best Picture. This is not only a movie recommendation of the day, this is a movie recommendation of the week, the month, the year. Highly recommend this one. And I know most of you have seen it, so tell all the people who haven't seen it why they should consider watching this movie if they haven't already. Going My Way. This actually won 7 Academy Awards and stars Bing Crosby as a priest who comes in to take over the church of an aging priest. And he's bringing with him some new ways, some new way of doing things, and the old priest is kind of resenting him for that. Now, this movie is so outdated. Like, churches don't function like this anymore. You know, the way that he gets troubled teens off the street by creating a boys' choir, not super realistic. But it is a very touching movie, and, you know, Bing Crosby is wonderful. The relationship he has with the father is wonderful. It's easily a movie recommendation of the day, even without the Oscar. We are talking about one of my favorite Best Picture winners, no joke, The Lost Weekend by Billy Wilder. This is something that actually has held up pretty well, all things considering. It is about a guy who goes on a drinking binge over the weekend. He's obviously an alcoholic and needs the booze. And look, I've never been drunk. I've never even had alcohol, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if this is what it's really like, but I know people who do get drunk, and I've seen how they act, and I've known some pretty harsh alcoholics, and they act pretty much like him. Like, booze is one of those things that has not changed very much over the years, it seems. It messes with your life, and this is one of the best movies about the subject. It did win Best Picture and Best Actor. Highly recommended. Best Years of Our Lives. In my opinion, one of the Best Picture winners that is not talked about nearly as much as it should be. Now, just because we have to get into the whole, you know, what do I prefer? I would have preferred if It's a Wonderful Life had won Best Picture that year. That said, this is a great movie about soldiers coming home from the war and finding not only the world has kind of left them behind, but they are not really capable of living in that world anymore. It was brilliantly directed by William Wyler, who was obviously a Best Picture mainstay, and this is a great movie, and I actually think this has more to say today than it did back then, because back then the soldiers were coming home from a supported war. Now many soldiers come home from wars that are not supported by the general public, and they're treated pretty much the same way, if not worse. Gentleman's Agreement. This is an okay but not great movie about anti-Semitism. Now, in some ways, this may be more important now because anti-Semitism seems to be coming back. It's about a reporter who goes around claiming that he is Jewish. He is not Jewish, but he claims he is Jewish, and he finds himself being treated very differently, even from people who claimed to be his friend for many years, who did not know the supposed secret of his. So it's kind of a softball movie. It's very obvious what it's trying to do, but in today's climate, it kind of holds more water than it used to, at least for a while. This was like just not important at all. Now, maybe it is important to watch it again. I don't know. But anyway, if you've seen it, tell me why you did or did not like it, and I will. And we have our first foreign winner, Best Picture winner, Hamlet. This was a British film, the first time someone other than America had won Best Picture, by Laurence Olivier, who also plays the title role. Now, this is not a great adaptation of Hamlet. There have been better adaptations, in all honesty. I think Kenneth Branagh personally directed the ultimate version of Hamlet. But this was also notable because this was one of the first times that the director directed himself to a Best Actor Oscar. So that's pretty important. Now, this movie is kind of weird. I don't know how you can necessarily find it. I don't think it's on any streaming service. And the DVD is long out of print. This Blu-ray is imported. I don't know if you realize. So this one's going to be hard to find. But if you want to see the first Shakespeare production to win Best Picture, it's Hamlet, All the King's Men. This movie has probably held up better than it should, and it's actually kind of scary how well it holds up. This is about a politician. Well, he's not a politician. He's a regular guy who decides to run for public office, becomes a career politician, and he's a champion of the working class, of the middleman, and then he becomes powerful and corrupt, and by the end of the movie, he is nowhere near. You wonder even why you were rooting for him in the first place. Unfortunately, like many of our political heroes, if you know what I mean. So anyway, I don't know where you can stream this one. This is a Blu-ray that they only made 3,000 copies of. It might be a little hard to find, but I think it's definitely worth watching. It's a movie recommendation of the day for sure. All About Eve, one of the all-time great Best Picture winners. One of the great all-time dramas. It's about this girl who meets her idol, Eve, who's like a big celebrity, and works under her to become a star herself and starts sabotaging Eve's career to start putting glory onto herself. There's a lot of intrigue, a lot of backstabbing. This was Game of Thrones before there was Game of Thrones. What great performances. This is a great one. I cannot overstate how great this one is. So anyway, All About Eve. Have no idea where you can stream it. You might just have to buy it on Blu-ray. I don't know. It's totally worth it, though. If you've seen it, I'd like you to comment to tell people why they should see this one. An American in Paris, it's okay. It's okay. Not particularly great. Not particularly bad either. It's got some really good songs, as well as a fairly impressive, although kind of pointless when you get down to it, 17-minute dance sequence near the end. The choreography of Gene Kelly is obviously the star of the film. He's obviously an American in Paris. There's a little bit of love in there. There's a lot of great music, particularly I've Got Rhythm, which you have probably heard at least once in your life, even if you have not seen this movie. But if you have seen this movie and you think people should watch it, let them know below in the comments. Today's 95 Days of Oscar centers on what's arguably the worst Best Picture winner of all time, The Greatest Show on Earth, which is anything but. It is basically about the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey circus. And that's it. In fact, many of the circus acts themselves were literally filmed and put in this movie, and so it almost is more like a documentary than an actual movie. It was by Cecil B. DeMille, who was known for his grand scope of everything, and certainly he made the circus big and loud. Now, even though it's not a particularly good movie, I think it's kind of an important movie to have, because the Ringling Brothers Circus basically stopped doing its thing a few years ago. And so now we have basically a documentation of what the circus experience was like, and that might prove to be valuable. But maybe you like this movie. If you do, comment below. Today, it's From Here to Eternity. Definitely a movie recommendation of the day about love and corruption on the army base, and of course the beginning of World War II with the attack of Pearl Harbor. You've probably seen this iconic scene, and it is just as romantic in this movie as you probably imagined it would be. And so Frank Sinatra actually won Best Supporting Actor for this movie. Can you believe that? On the Waterfront by Elia Kazan. This is a wonderful movie, one of the best performances of Marlon Brando's career, who also won Best Actor for this movie. About a down-on-his-luck boxer. Well, he used to box. Now he doesn't. And he's kind of gotten involved in the corruption of the mob and power-hungry people on the streets of New York that wield their power poorly. And this is just a fascinating character study about a man who probably could have done great things with his life, and because he took some bad advice is now not living a particularly good one. This is highly recommended. Marty, this also doubles as a movie recommendation of the day very easily, about a middle-aged meat cutter who does not have much luck in love. He doesn't have a girlfriend. Women have not shown much interest in him, and he's not particularly attractive, and he's almost given up on love. And then one night, he meets someone, and they have a wonderful night out on the town, and maybe it's not too late for true love. Fun fact, this was originally going to be aired on TV, but they loved it so much they put it in the theaters, and it won the Best Picture Oscar. Never undersell how good a TV movie can be. Around the World in 80 Days. I don't recommend this one. Not even a little bit. I mean, I'm sure there's worse movies you could watch. It's based off the popular Jules Verne novel, and it's about two guys who go around the world. Now, this movie was unique at the time because they actually filmed in many of the locations that they went, and this was before the internet, before National Geographic, or at least National Geographic TV. People didn't see these locations live, so it was kind of neat back then. But nowadays, you can get all that stuff on Disney Plus and Netflix. This is not particularly memorable for any real reason other than that. So this is definitely a dud. But maybe you've seen it, maybe you like it. If you do, tell us why below. I'd be very curious. We have today The Bridge on the River Kwai by David Lean. Now, Bridge on the River Kwai is a unique Best Picture winner. It's an action film. Pretty much a pure action film, too. It takes place during the war, yes, but you don't see too much politics of the war. You don't really even know why the war is being fought. All you know is that there are some British people who have been captured by the Japanese, and they are, coerced, they're forced to help them build a bridge on top of the River Kwai, which the general, played by Alec Guinness in an Oscar-winning performance, initially objects to until he realizes this bridge might actually outlive him, the Japanese, the war, and this could be his legacy. And he becomes just as invested in it as the Japanese are. Gigi. Winner of 9 Academy Awards, one of the last major musicals to win this award. Well, not really, but this was the last one for MGM at the very least. And this is an okay movie. I like the songs. I really do like the songs. I think the storyline's kind of okay, about a young girl named Gigi who's a free spirit in a rich society and befriends an older gentleman who is looking for a wife, who thinks he wants a proper wife until he realizes he has much more fun with the carefree girl who's not so stringent on the rules. I mean, shocking, right? So anyway, if you like this movie, I'd like to know why you enjoyed it and whether or not you recommend it or not. I think this is a movie recommendation of the day. It's good enough for that. Holy cow, is this a great movie. This is great movie. First movie to win 11 Academy Awards. Deserved every single one of them. William Wyler, he directs this movie about Judah Ben-Hur, who is betrayed by his friend and goes basically on a forced quest to find his way home and defeat that friend. He also runs across Jesus Christ, no joke, and it's a very touching tale about what Christianity meant to people out who were not directly involved in Jesus Christ, and this man who goes out seeking revenge and finds new purpose in life. This is a wonderful epic. The chariot race alone is worth watching. If you like it, comment below. And today it is The Apartment by Billy Wilder. This is a great movie. This is actually one of the movies that kind of brought the Hays Code to a bit of an end, as Jack Lemmon plays a man who rents out his apartment to executives at the work to basically get promotions and overtime at work. One time, one of the business partners leaves one of his women behind, played by Shirley MacLaine, and they both basically fall in love. It is at once an edgy and yet sweet love story. It won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. This is a great one today. Winner of, I believe, 10 Academy Awards, West Side Story. By the way, my copy is signed by the guy who plays Griff in the movie. Pretty cool, huh? This is a retelling of the Romeo and Juliet storyline set in the streets of New York against the Jets and the Sharks, a bunch of white boys and Puerto Ricans. But of course, Tony and Maria, from opposite sides of the spectrum, fall in love with each other, and, well, it creates conflict with extremely memorable songs, including Somewhere and America. This is one of the finest films of all time. I highly recommend it. Time for another epic. David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia. Peter O'Toole as Lawrence, who basically leads a bunch of Arabians across the desert in hopes of getting them freedom. This is an epic film, beautifully shot, wonderful cinematography, excellent performance by Peter O'Toole, one of the best of his performance. Now, funny story before we leave, one of my friends said he never took the Academy Award seriously because he's like, well, why didn't Peter O'Toole win for Lawrence of Arabia? Who won that year that was better than Peter O'Toole? And I thought, because I could remember this, and I said, Gregory Peck for To Kill a Mockingbird. And he goes like, oh, that's unfortunate. So I always love that story. It's Tom Jones, not the singer, the British character. I'm going to be honest, I hate this movie. I hate this movie. And it's a shame that I do, because this is like a rarity for the Academy Awards, a true comedy to win Best Picture. It's not even a little bit serious. It's almost like a Monty Python sketch. And you would think that I would like it, but it's really not very good, in my opinion. Reportedly, this was like the last movie John F. Kennedy saw before he died. I wonder if that had something to do with it winning. Every time I look at what was nominated that year, it wasn't a particularly strong year for movies, so maybe this was the best they could do. I don't know, it's a little outside the box, but I don't care for it too much. Today is a really good one. My Fair Lady, winner of 8 Academy Awards, including picture, director, actor, but not actress. There's a little bit of a controversy about that. This is, of course, where a professor takes a street girl who can't speak English very well, can't do much of anything, and decides to turn her into a lady. And then, of course, he falls in love with her. Now, Audrey Hepburn is good in this movie, but there was controversy because Julia Roberts premiered the show on Broadway, was not asked to reprise her role, and to make matters worse, Audrey Hepburn's singing voice was dubbed. Now, Julie Andrews would have the last laugh. She would win Best Actress for Mary Poppins, which I believe that or Doctor Strange would win better Best Picture winners, but this is still a pretty good one. After Julie Andrews was unfairly robbed of her role in last year's Best Picture winner, My Fair Lady, she got her revenge big time, not only by winning the Academy Award for Mary Poppins the previous year, but getting nominated again and starring in the Best Picture winner, The Sound of Music. This is one of the greatest movies ever made, musical or otherwise. This is fantastic. If you have not seen The Sound of Music, you have not truly lived. About a former nun who goes to watch kids for a rich general type. I don't know if he's general. He's called the Colonel, but I really don't know what he does, to be honest. And she ends up being a mother figure for the kids, falling in love with the captain, and some of these musical numbers, like 1 minute does not do justice, but see it if you haven't seen it. And here's one that I think is actually quite underrated. And in fact, for all the Christian movies that we see made year after year and how terrible they are, this actually proves that you can be a movie with Christian themes and be good. What a shock. It's called A Man for All Seasons, starring Paul Scofield and directed by Fred Zinnemann. This is about the writer Thomas More, who goes through a sham of a legal trial after he refuses to give his blessing to a, let's say, unbiblical marriage for the ruling king at the time, and he is unjustly jailed, and there's no evidence, there's no case. It's actually quite frustrating. It's definitely persecution in its finest, but it's won over by a great leading performance and smart writing. In the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger, a movie about a murder in a small town that these two cops must solve. Now, of course, that is the surface level storyline, but in reality, it is about racial tensions and the fact that this black detective might actually be smarter than all the white cops put together, and their inability to cope with that. It's got a really good performance by Sidney Poitier, and Rod Steiger did win Best Actor. Is it Rod Steiger? Yeah, it's Rod Steiger, who won Best Actor for this movie, but Sidney Poitier, I think, is the true star of the film, and of course there's a very famous scene where he is slapped. Instead of taking it, he slaps back. Very unheard of at the time, but very welcome. Oliver, winner of Best Picture, Best Director, and here's the thing. I know this movie's kind of the running butt of the jokes in Oscar pundits community, like, oh wow, look, Oliver won Best Picture over like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which wasn't even nominated. And look, I get it. Compared to other movies, maybe Oliver wasn't the best. But that said, it's still a pretty fun movie. I remember seeing as a kid, by the way, first and only G-rated film to win Best Picture since the ratings were established, fun fact. And, you know, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's got good music. I like the characters. It actually treats Oliver like the MacGuffin that he actually is and focuses more time on Fagin and Artful Dodger and a actually kind of terrifying Bill Sikes, in my opinion. So yeah, I really like Oliver. You know how yesterday was the first G-rated film to win Best Picture? Well, well, the first and only G-rated film, if you don't count the movies that got re-rated later on. Well, today, Midnight Cowboy, the first and only, so far, X-rated film to win Best Picture at the Oscars. This is about a guy who goes to New York to become a male gigolo, if you will, and finds that life on the streets is not as easy as he thought. Making money selling your body turns out to be kind of difficult, and he teams with a friend on the street named Rico, played by Dustin Hoffman, who tries to show him how to survive on the mean streets of New York. Very compelling movie, very profound in some ways, highly recommended. Patton, starring George C. Scott. This is a really good one. This is worth seeing alone just for the opening sequence where he's standing in front of the American flag and giving the "No man ever won a war by dying for his country" speech. Truly one of the most memorable scenes in movie history. Fun fact, Francis Ford Coppola, who will direct a couple movies during this 95 Days of Oscar that are noteworthy, helped write the script. And George C. Scott, who won Best Actor, famously refused the award. If an actor refused an award, he claimed he was going to stay home and watch a hockey game. If that happened today, that person would not win the award. The Academy likes the campaigning, but they really loved the performance. They gave it to him anyway. The French Connection by William Friedkin, starring Gene Hackman, who also won a Best Actor Oscar, although I think personally that was not a well-deserved award. I don't think he was... I mean, he was good in it, but I don't think it was especially great acting, personally. As for the movie itself, it's a pretty good action film. This is one of the lesser Best Picture movies. The main thing that people remember about it is, of course, the car chasing the train scene, which is still one of the great action sequences of all time, and deservedly so. As for the movie itself, it's a little predictable, it's a little cliche. Popeye Doyle is not particularly a deep character, but it is fun for what it is. Best Picture, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but overall, good movie. Remember how we talked about Francis Ford Coppola the last time around? Well, he's back. He directed The Godfather. Believe it or not, The Godfather was considered a surprise win at the Academy Awards. Many people thought Cabaret would win. It won 8 Academy Awards, the most amount of Oscars ever won for a film that did not win Best Picture, but with its measly 3, The Godfather came in and upset. By the way, Marlon Brando also won Best Actor and famously refused the award by sending Sachin Littlefeather, a supposed Native American, to deny the award for him on live TV. The Godfather is pure perfection. I don't know what else to say about it. It is a great movie. It's one of the perfect films, undone only by a sequel, which we might be talking about a little bit later in this whole little thing we're doing. The Sting, with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. This is a fun movie. This is probably one of the all-time classic heist films, if you will. I mean, it's not a heist movie in the sense of like Ocean's 11 or Fast 5, if you will, but it's about 2 conmen who decide that they want to rip off a rich SOB, played by Paul Scottfield. It is very entertaining with an extremely memorable ending. The sting in the title, if you will. It won 7 Academy Awards, including Picture and Director. It was actually Robert Redford's only Best Actor nomination, although he did not win. So this is an easy recommendation. It's also one of the ones that's probably something you watch as your grandmother because it's just so funny. What can I say? And we remember a couple days ago we talked about The Godfather, how it was perfection. The only way you can top perfection is with more perfection. The trilogy came in a set, obviously. The Godfather Part 2, the first sequel to win Best Picture. And unlike the first one, this one was expected to win, and it is even better than the perfection that is The Godfather. It shows 2 stories, not only of Michael Corleone taking over his father's business, but what led his father, Vito Corleone, to create the mafia as we see it in the first film. It's wonderful performances, wonderful acting, wonderful writing, cinematography. Everything about this movie is perfect. The first 2 movies, today's movie is the second of 3 movies to win the Oscar Grand Slam. Picture, director, actor, actress, and a screenplay award. This is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, one of the most haunting films you will ever see. Oh boy, this one will send chills down your spine. It's got a little bit of humor in it, to be sure, but the story about a man who goes to a mental institution and starts changing things up, maybe for the better, to the ire of the evil nurse who runs the place with an iron fist. What a memorable one. And today it is the Italian stallion himself, Rocky. Yes, the movie that made Sylvester Stallone a household name won Best Picture. It actually got 10 nominations, if you can believe it or not. And Stallone, ironically, was not one to walk away with a gold statue. He was nominated for screenplay and acting, but it won for directing, producing, and the third award that I can't remember, so he didn't get anything. But this is still a classic underdog story. It still holds up well to this day, and of course, it spawned a huge franchise that is still going on to this day. And most of the movies, pretty good, to be honest. You know, it's one of the few series that has kind of lasted as long as it did, and it's still pretty good. And it all started here. And we're going to be talking about Annie Hall today. You know, wonderful movie. No Woody Allen jokes, though, none whatsoever. We'll mock him in a more subtle way, but, you know, these reviews are too short for that, quite frankly. So, Annie Hall, which some science fiction fans refer to as the movie that beat Star Wars for Best Picture, as if that's Annie Hall's fault for being a better movie, is about a neurotic guy who falls in love with this street-smart woman who's independent and beautiful, and they have a very tumultuous relationship, if you know what I mean. And it is a really funny, really heartfelt movie. Now, some people might have a hard time watching this because of the director's personal point of views. You gotta be, I don't know, you gotta separate the art from the artist sometime. This is a classic movie. It's highly recommended. Definitely 5 stars. No Woody Allen impression today. We are talking about The Deer Hunter, Michael Cimino's first and only real successful film. So this won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. This is a movie that's kind of told in 3 parts, if you will. It's a 3-hour-long movie. Each part is like an hour long. There's a wedding, there's a war, and then there's the aftermath. It's a very interesting way to make a war film, but I think it is, for the most part, effective. I do wish it would have been like maybe 40 minutes shorter. I think the wedding sequence goes on a little too long, if I'm being honest. But overall, this is a very touching, very harrowing movie, and the Russian roulette sequences alone are intense and brutal and make the movie worth watching alone. Kramer versus Kramer. This is a movie about a married couple who go to court over custody of their young son when the wife decides she wants more out of life, leaves her husband, and they start fighting. Now, that's kind of the general synopsis. The real story is with Dustin Hoffman as he tries to figure out how to be a single parent without the woman who was typically supposed to take care of the kids, and now his parental responsibilities look very different in a world that frowns upon men being at home with the kids as opposed to being in the office. It comes from a different time period, and it's interesting to see what life was kind of like and what was expected from parental roles back then. It's still a very affecting movie, though. We have Ordinary People. This was directed by Robert Redford, who also won Best Director. Now, this movie gets some flack because it beat Raging Bull for Best Picture. Yeah, that Raging Bull. And when you say that, yeah, this looks a little crummy, like a little crummy win. But on the other hand, ignoring that fact, it is a very sad and moving film about a boy basically trying to learn to live with himself after he survives a deadly boating accident and his older and much more favored brother does not survive, and the complications that come from the father and the mother who are dealing with the tragedy and how to process with it. It is a very good movie, ignoring that whole award controversy. Another underdog story, Chariots of Fire. And when I say underdog story, it's in the sense that this was a big surprise. Warren Beatty's Reds was the favorite to win, but then the British were coming, and they swiped Best Picture from Reds. It has a very iconic soundtrack. If you've seen any Olympics, any sporting events, you've heard the Chariots of Fire theme, and it's a great score. Now, as for the movie itself, it's good. It's not great. It's just pretty good. I do agree that Reds would have been a much better choice for Best Picture, but hey, this did win. It is a very good movie. It's not like you're going to be bored. Well, some people might be bored with it. It's a little slow at times, too. But hey, that's up for you to decide. Gandhi. So this is a tough one. I like Gandhi. As a movie, I don't think it's a Best Picture winner. It's certainly not as good as E.T., which lost that year. Gandhi is not something that you necessarily watch for fun. You watch it to, see the scope, to feel the emotions. It does work, but it's not something you really pop on just for fun. It kind of requires a little work of the audience, and so
For that reason, it's kind of a strange Best Picture choice, in my opinion. But hey, it's still a pretty good one, and Ben Kingsley as the title character is extremely good and won a well-deserved Oscar for his performance. Terms of Endearment by James L. Brooks, The Simpsons producer. Yes, he directed movies at one point. A lot of them were really good, and this one is especially good about a mother and a daughter and their very complicated relationship. And by the way, Jack Nicholson, who won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, is also the love interest of the mother, and only in the movies can Shirley MacLaine and Jack Nicholson, who both have, let's say, high-spirited opinions and lifestyles and are super strong and bossy, can they get together and live peacefully together. Only in the movies. But hey, wonderful movie, and it's one of the few movies about mothers and daughters in Best Picture history, and now that I've come to think about it. Deus. Straight out, this is my favorite movie of all time. It truly is. The story of a composer who is talented but not great, who hears music from someone and he knows that the music is classic but no one else recognizes it, is like just a fascinating one. And yes, it's Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, just to let you know. And this was like one of the first movies I saw where it's like, this is truly art and entertainment combined, because it is such an artful film. It is a beautiful film, and yet it is also very, very entertaining. Now, F. Abraham Murray won the Best Actor Oscar, but Tom Hulce, who was also nominated for Best Actor, holds his own as the title character himself. Out of Africa by Sidney Pollack. Not gonna lie, I don't like this one. I think this is extremely boring about, a couple of white people who meet in Africa and fall in love. I mean, look, it's beautifully shot. Robert Redford and Meryl Streep are good. Of course they are. They're Robert Redford and Meryl Streep. But it meanders way too long. It's not very engaging. It's honestly not that different from most romance stories, except it might be more artful, I guess, but it's not nearly as fun. I thought The Color Purple would have been a much, much better Best Picture winner that year, or Akira Kurosawa's Ron, but whatever, woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? Platoon. This is from Oliver Stone, who was an actual Vietnam vet who decided to make a movie about his experiences in the Vietnam War. Now, some people don't like this because, it doesn't exactly show the military in the most positive of light. But here's the thing, he actually went there, this was his experience, so he claimed he made a movie, and it's a very effective movie. It also stars, of all people, Charlie Sheen in a very serious role, and he was a good actor at one point, believe it or not. It also has Johnny Depp in a small role, which it's kind of funny to see him before he actually grew up, although William Dafoe and Tom Berenger, they were the key stars. They both got supporting actor nominations, and they were excellent. And it has a very famous movie shot. The Last Emperor by Bernardo Bertolucci. And before we continue, yes, I have a 3D version of this movie, and no, the 3D makes no difference whatsoever. The only reason I got it was for the proper aspect ratio, which for some reason Criterion Collection absolutely botched. I don't want to kick the door, so, there. That's about as good as it's going to get. Anyway, follows the life of Emperor Puyi, the last emperor of China. What a film. Like Lawrence of Arabia, Gone with the Wind. The scope, the colors, the story, memorable. It's a little long, but most epics are. It's actually, despite winning 9 awards, every award it was nominated for, it's kind of fallen into obscurity, and that's a shame, because it really is a timeless masterpiece, despite it not leaving an impact on culture at all.
Rain Man. This was a very good movie about a cocky businessman played by Tom Cruise who discovers he has an autistic brother, and that autistic brother, there might be a person there somewhere, but where is he? It is probably one of the funnier Best Picture winners, but it's also got a lot of heart, and it's way more touching than you would expect it to be. Won 4 Academy Awards, including director and actor, so, a lot of top ones. Dustin Hoffman definitely steals the show. And I do recommend Rain Man. Driving Miss Daisy. Now, this movie has a little bit of controversy behind it because the Academy not only famously snubbed Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, which had a much more realistic take on race relations in America, but then they gave this, the movie that didn't even get a Best Director nomination. Now, I agree that Do the Right Thing was snubbed. That would have been a much better Best Picture winner. That said, that doesn't make this one bad. I do think the performances of Jessica Tandy, who won Best Actress for this movie, and Morgan Freeman are excellent. They have a wonderful relationship, And I don't think this is as easy on race as some people like to claim it is. Like, one of the most heartbreaking scenes is when Tandy's character goes to listen to Martin Luther King live while, Hoke is in the car. I do think this is a good movie, even if Do the Right Thing is a better movie. What do you say, though? Comment below. And today's movie is the movie that proves that Kevin Costner is not only a great director, he's not that bad of an actor when given the right role, which he gave himself, and that is Dances with Wolves. I really, really love this movie. Now, this movie has come under fire recently for being a white savior trope movie. I could not disagree more. The Indians are definitely the good guys in this movie, and while the Kevin Costner character does help them by bringing them guns and things like that, ultimately he learns from them. He adapts to their way of life. He doesn't change them. They change him. That seems to be the opposite of a white savior movie. And I think that if you are claiming that, you probably haven't actually watched this. And if you haven't watched it, it's a shame, because it's a really good movie. But as always, I encourage discussion. The Silence of the Lambs. One of, I'm going to stop doing that voice, a few, like 3 movies, I believe, that won the Oscar Grand Slam. Picture, director, actor, actress, and screenplay. Now, full disclosure, I wanted Beauty and the Beast to win that year. But that said, you cannot deny what an impactful movie this was. This is definitely filmmaking at its finest. It is acting at its finest. It still creates the scares. And interestingly, it creates the scares by not showing a whole lot. It is a very well-made movie, definitely a step above your typical horror movie, and it is highly recommended if you haven't seen it, even if you don't like scary movies. But we are looking at Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. This is Eastwood's commentary on the Western genre that made him a star, that he was constantly criticized, glorified violence, and Eastwood definitely had some thoughts about his own legacy, and he said it beautifully with this movie. This would be the first of a couple Clint Eastwood directed movies that would win the coveted Best Picture award. And obviously we'll be talking about those other ones later on, but in the meantime, this one is actually kind of fallen into obscurity, and some people don't even know what this movie is and don't realize it won Best Picture. So hopefully, if you're one of those people, this is a good opportunity for you to, hey, you've heard of it, check it out. It's really good. And today's movie is simply perfection. It is Schindler's List. I don't even know what to say about it. This is one of the greatest movies ever made. It is a movie where people famously say that is one of the best films I've ever seen in my life, and I never want to see it again. It is about as harrowing a film as you can watch, about as important a film as you can watch. Rarely do you have a movie that is so good that when people look at the Oscars, they can say 100% the Academy got it right. It was not even a contest. This was so far and above everything else that was nominated that year, or even in subsequent and previous years. Chances are you've seen this, but if you haven't, get ready to cry. Forrest Gump, one of my favorite Best Picture winners. Now, again, there's been some controversy about this one upon further reflection, like, oh, it makes fun of disabled people, things like that. Guys, if you're saying this, they probably haven't seen the movie. I mean, yeah, the guy is mentally disabled, but he becomes very successful, and the whole idea behind Forrest Gump is, in some way, what does the world's biggest history events look like through the eyes of someone who is probably mentally forever a child? And it's a very interesting commentary, and it's really charming, really touching. I can't say enough good things about this one. We are looking at Braveheart, written and directed and starring Mel Gibson. Now, it's a little bit hard to look at Mel Gibson as a hero these days. He's definitely shown himself to have a very ugly side of him that he's never truly apologized or repented for. That said, Braveheart is a great movie. It's a great epic. It's got a lot of good action sequences. It has Mel Gibson's unique little sense of humor that's thrown in there. And of course, it has a torture scene at the end, because what Mel Gibson movie would be complete without a torture scene? Anyway, it's still an entertaining movie to watch. So I personally like it. I recommend it, but I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Comment below. English Patient, the movie that everybody loved until Seinfeld made an episode about it, and then all of a sudden everyone hated it, which I think is extremely unfortunate, because The English Patient is a very good movie. It is beautifully shot. It is wonderfully written. The acting is superb. It is riveting. It is... There's so many great things. It is epic in pretty much every sense of the word. I mean, you don't think of a movie about a burned pilot basically being this engaging thing, but it is really engaging if you take away the, I would say, surface level Seinfeld criticisms of the movie. It is excellent. I highly recommend it, but I do like to know, have you seen it? What do you think about it? Does Seinfeld have a point? Titanic, the movie that was king of the world for many years until James Cameron, the director of this, decided to make a movie about a bunch of blue people, and, well, there we are. Titanic got a lot of flack from people at the time because Leonardo DiCaprio was really popular and boyfriends, girlfriends were swooning over him, so I think it created like this animosity, but this is a great movie, make no mistake. This is epic. This is why you go to the movies. This is what's different from TV, and Titanic has definitely held its ground. It's still wildly entertaining, and I think now that, you know, we're not all in high school anymore and girls, or at least teenage girls, aren't pining over DiCaprio anymore, I think many of us have forgiven, we've moved on. Shakespeare in Love, the movie that famously defeated Saving Private Ryan for Best Picture. And here's the thing, it should be noted, Saving Private Ryan probably is a better movie. On the other hand, you know how we complain that the Academy never gives comedies Best Picture? Hello, Shakespeare in Love, this is a comedy, and it won Best Picture. It's a really funny, it won 7 Oscars. Can you believe that? Anyway, it is a very funny movie. It is very charming. It's one of the ultimate date night movies that you can actually take seriously because it's also kind of a period piece and things like that. In the same way, in a kind of way, you know, it's not like a shot-for-shot historical movie. It clearly has fun with the facts and events, but hey, it's still wildly entertaining. Do you think this is an undeserved controversial film? I'd like to know. Comment below. American Beauty, in my opinion, the worst movie to win Best Picture. And it's not because of Kevin Spacey. He's actually quite good in this movie. No, I don't like this movie because I don't like the characters. I think they're all miserable. I think the movie is relentlessly bleak. I'm not sure what the positive message is supposed to be. It kind of leaves you feeling unclean by the end of the whole thing. So, yeah, this has been in bargain bins for years, and there's a reason for that. But I would like to know, am I correct, or do you think there's a lot to like about American Beauty? I would love to know. We are in the new millennium, and the first movie that won the new millennium was Gladiator, Ridley Scott's Gladiator. And unpopular opinion, I don't like this movie. I don't. This is actually one of my least favorite Best Picture winners. I thought Traffic or Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon would have been much, much better picks. And I don't like it just because I thought it'd be better movies. This is just such a dreary movie. I don't like the color scheme. I don't really care that much about the conflict. I thought Ben-Hur was a much better movie. Like, why are you going to give Best Picture to basically Ben-Hur, but worse? I didn't like the visual effects. This movie rubbed me the wrong way all the way through, and I've just never really gotten into it, although I do think Joaquin Phoenix is pretty good. And here's the thing. We have a second Russell Crowe movie in a row that won Best Picture, but unlike Gladiator, I actually really like this one. It's A Beautiful Mind by Ron Howard, and it's about a physicist who is a brilliant mind but kind of awkward in love. There is something else that happens, but I don't really want to spoil it in case you haven't seen it, because it actually is quite a surprise. It goes in a direction you did not think it was going to go, and I remember when I saw it for the first time, my mind was pretty much blown. And this is basically Ron Howard doing what he does best, which is intimate character dramas with high stakes. And the musical is back. That's what the headline said when Chicago won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Now, this seems like it's a recurring thing, but I don't think the 2000s got off to a great start with Oscar, because this is yet another Best Picture winner I don't care that much for, and I don't care for one very specific reason. For a musical, the songs could for the most part be cut out of the movie and you would not notice. The story would play out the same way. The musical numbers were kind of detached from the movie in these fantasy sequences, and I don't like that. If you can cut the songs out and not feel them missing, then I think you have failed as a musical, and that's the main reason I don't like Chicago. But I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Maybe you like it. 1. The epic The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, which, fun fact, holds the Guinness Book of World Records as the Best Picture winner with the longest title. Now, some people do claim that the reason this movie won like 11 Academy Awards was because they were honoring the trilogy of Lord of the Rings movies, all three of them which were Best Picture nominees. There's probably some truth to that, but that said, that doesn't make this movie any less worthy of the top prize. I believe this was even the first fantasy film to win Best Picture, and the only bad thing about it is that you have to watch two other movies to really appreciate this one. But other than that, it's perfection, and Clint Eastwood is back. He won Best Picture and Director again with $1 Million Baby, a surprise winner and really almost appropriate for a boxing movie about an underdog. It's about this trainer who's kind of washed up. He hasn't had like a lot of success, and this young woman played by Hilary Swank comes in and wants to become a fighter. And he starts training her, and it turns out she's really good, and they go on a journey together with many twists and turns and emotional heartbreaks and all that jazz. So I definitely can recommend $1 Million Baby. I can see why it won. Got another hot take for you, because today's movie is Crash. This is considered by many to be one of the worst Best Picture winners of all time. I disagree. I also do not agree that Brokeback Mountain was a better movie than this. It was good. I did like this a little better. Although personally my favorite of the five was Capote, and that had no chance of winning, so that just kind of goes to show what goes on with these award movies sometimes. I like Crash. It's about a bunch of people whose lives interconnect and racial tensions flare. I think it was actually interesting that people complained to Oscars of avoiding racial topics when they did award this Best Picture several years ago. But there you have it. Marty finally wins. Martin Scorsese, The Departed. Finally he won. He won for such a great movie. This is on par with Goodfellas and Taxi Driver as one of his best films. The twists, the turns, the performances, the way he uses cell phones. Like, you better hope when you were in the theater nobody had a cell phone on, because it might actually disrupt the movie because you would think it was part of the film. Like, this was Martin Scorsese basically not giving an F anymore, making a great action movie, and he finally won for one. I think he should have won again for Hugo, but another movie was popular, and we'll talk about that when the time comes. No Country for Old Men by the Coen Brothers. This is an interesting one. The Coen Brothers definitely don't shy away from making unconventional films. I'm just surprised the Academy actually went for one. It is extremely dark. It is extremely violent. It follows a guy who finds a lot of money and the hitman who is tasked with killing him and retrieving said money. And that's about all I'm going to say, although Javier Bardem definitely won a well-deserved Best Supporting Actor for his turn as Anton Chigurh. He was very, very good in this. This is definitely one of the darkest of the Best Picture winners that the Academy did. But next year they would come back with something a little bit lighter. We have something a little bit more cheerful than the last couple days. It is Slumdog Millionaire by Danny Boyle. This is, despite being R-rated, definitely one of the feel-good movies about a boy who winds up on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and gets to the $1 million question. And when police accuse him of cheating, he tells his life story, so you find out exactly how he came to discover those answers. And by the end, you will be singing and dancing along with everyone else on the screen. I can guarantee you that, well, maybe not guarantee. Some people don't like it, but, you know, I think most people like it. This year, it was the big movie versus the little movie, with the highest grossing film of the year beat the lowest grossing Best Picture nominee of all time. Well, no, it didn't. The lowest grossing Best Picture nominee of all time became the lowest grossing Best Picture winner of all time, at least until recently. That was The Hurt Locker. This was also the first movie where Catherine Bigelow, the first female, won Best Director. Wonderful milestone. This is a good movie. It is about soldiers in the Iraq War, but it's not a political movie. It is a straightforward action movie about a bomb diffuser who gets high off of the dangers of diffusing bombs, and it is very tense for the most part. So I definitely enjoyed this movie, and the British are coming once again as The King's Speech won Best Picture. Now, I am of the belief that The Social Network should have definitely won. I think it was a travesty that this won instead. That said, this is a very good movie. It's a, I guess, biopic, but it's not based off anything in particular about King George's stuttering issues and his relationship with his speech therapist, who basically has to prepare him for a big speech to tell the British people that they are going to be going to war with Germany. It's very conventional, and I don't know how it wins Best Director when it's not a particularly well-directed movie. It's just anyone could have made it. But that said, it is very good, so, I like it. Even though Social Network's better, it's still pretty good. The Artist, the first movie since the very first movie Wings to win Best Picture. I like this cover, but if you look, it's all scratchy over the years. That's the only thing about these kind of covers that it's a little annoying. Now, I think Hugo or The Tree of Life would have been better Best Picture winners, and Martin Scorsese could have definitely earned a second Academy Award for Hugo. But this was really good. Jean Dujardin won Best Actor, and he did do a very, very good job in a movie where you did not hear him speak for the most part. And I think this was a very good movie. It was a nice little homage to silent movies while also being a good silent movie in its own right. So I do like The Artist. Argo, very, very entertaining movie about the Iranian hostage and America's attempts to get them back by covering as a Hollywood crew, scouting locations to make a movie. Now, I do want to say that Life of Pi was robbed Best Picture. I thought that was clearly the best picture that they had nominated in that lineup. But that said, there was this whole thing going on with Ben Affleck. He got snubbed for Best Director at the Oscars, which was a snub, and all the other guilds then gave him all the awards, and so you couldn't stop the train. So I think this is one of the weaker Best Picture winners, but it's still a pretty good movie, all things considered. And today's is well, not a terrible one in terms of a bad movie, but it's a rough one to watch. It's 12 Years a Slave, about a free black man who was captured by white men and sold to slave owners and was forced to work as a slave for 12 years, even though legally he was a free man. Obviously, this is one of those movies that makes you look back at our history and be a little embarrassed about certain aspects of it. And it's good for movies like this to exist to remind us of that terrible past and why we really need to be careful not to get back into that thinking ever again. So even though I personally liked Gravity better, I could understand why this won Best Picture. Got an interesting one today. We have Birdman, and I have to look at this, The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. Now, there was a lot of controversy about why this movie won. A lot of people thought that it was, actors, or Hollywood is awarding a movie about acting, yada, yada. I think it was a little bit more than that. I think the reason this movie won, and I can kind of see where they're coming from, is because by this point, superhero movies had taken over the business, and making challenging art was becoming more difficult, and Hollywood was basically publicly saying that they don't really like the superhero movies, that they don't feel artistically fulfilled. And the problem seems to have only gotten worse, which is why Birdman seems to be almost prophetic in some ways. We are looking at Spotlight. This movie only won 2 Academy Awards. I think this was the first time that a movie had only won 2 Oscars, including Best Picture, in a very, very long time. It was a very competitive year that year. And even though there are other movies I might have picked over this one, this was a really good one. It's about the journalists doing an investigation on the Catholic priest scandal, where they cover up some of the naughty things that the Catholic priests are doing to young boys. And this team of reporters basically makes their mission to uncover the scandal and report it to the world. And therefore, it is a very important film. I highly recommend it. It was on my top 10 best films of the year list. We're in the home stretch. We are getting into the new decade. And today's movie is Moonlight. And yes, this is the movie that actually won over La La Land. And it's really a shame that that incident overshadows this movie, because Moonlight is a very powerful movie about a young gay boy who lives in the hood, basically trying to live in a world that is hostile to him and basically guarantees that he will have no happy ending in life. Add that to the fact that he has like a mother who is not very stable, and a father figure in the form of a drug dealer, which is a questionable relationship to be sure. And Moonlight is captivating and fascinating and very, very heartbreaking. And I totally understand why the Academy voters went for it. Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water. The movie that has been commented many times, people say, oh, that's the movie where the woman has sex with a fish, right? And you go like, yeah, but it's not really about that. No, it is about outcasts. This takes place in the 60s, where all the people who are outcasts are villainized by the public, but they are in fact real humans, and they are the true heroes. The fish creature, he's considered a monster, but he's actually quite gentle. The deaf woman, she is, shunned, but people like her. The black woman, she is shunned, but she is a wonderful person. And the old guy is gay, and that's frowned upon. But in this movie, they are the heroes. In what is probably the second fantasy movie to win Best Picture. Maybe the first sci-fi, I don't know. Controversial one, Green Book. Boy, people really did not like the fact that Green Book won Best Picture, and I totally understand. You had Roma, you had Black Panther, you had Black Klansman. There were much, much better movies that the Academy could have picked for Best Picture. That said, Green Book is good, it is poignant, it is touching. It might not have been one of the best films of the year, and thus it probably shouldn't have won the Best Picture Oscar, but it was a genuinely good movie, and I think if you overlook what the Twitter mob was saying about it and you watch, you'll find that it actually is a call for unity and understanding one another, and I think movies like that aren't exactly harmful. So I personally like Green Book. Parasite by Bong Joon-ho. I'm going to be honest, this is one of the greatest things the Academy ever did by giving this movie Best Picture. This is phenomenal. Obviously, this is the first foreign language film to win Best Picture, which makes it a milestone. But by this winning, the Academy Awards became international, and what a good movie to make the Oscars international. I'm not even going to tell you what it's about. This is a movie that you should never ask what it's about. If you haven't seen it, just watch it, because you are in for a treat. But I'm going to leave it there. And we have the COVID winning Best Picture film, Nomadland. And what I mean by COVID winning, this was the year where theaters were shut down, there were a lot less movies being released, and Nomadland was considered the Best Picture winner. You can even kind of see why. Aside from it being a very beautiful movie about life and the meaning of it and purpose, a movie where the main character lives in a nomad out in the open world while everyone is stuck at home because of a virus that was killing everybody, that makes perfect sense for it to win Best Picture. And of course, not a lot of people saw it in theaters. Most people saw it on streaming, but you have to do what you got to do, right? The show must go on. And this comes to the end of our 95 days of Oscar, because there's going to be a new Best Picture winner tonight, which will be the movie recommendation of the day tomorrow. But the most recent, as of this recording, Best Picture winner is Coda. And you might notice I have a 4-year consideration disc. That's because Coda is not available on DVD or Blu-ray or 4K. It is exclusively on Apple TV Plus because it is the first streaming movie to win Best Picture. The acronym stands for Children of Deaf Adults, and it follows a hearing girl who wants to sing music, but there is a problem. She is the hearing daughter of an all-deaf family, and the deaf family not only doesn't understand music, they need her help for their thriving fish business to continue. I don't think this should have won Best Picture. I think it's very good. There were better movies, but the first streamer won Best Picture. And tomorrow there'll be a new Best Picture winner. Forgive the noise in the background. We have just finished the Oscar party, and we have a new Best Picture winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once. So it makes sense to make this the movie recommendation of the day. This is a crazy film. This is really, really wild. A universe-jumping multiverse film where a woman finds that her family and personal life are falling apart, can going to alternate universes with anime-inspired characters, rocks, and hot dog fingers help solve the key to her ability to relate to her family and repair it, and, well, come out on top of her life. I guess we'll just have to see. So anyway, new Best Picture winner. We are now doing 100 Days of Oscar. Have you seen it? Do you agree that it deserved a win? Comment below, and I'll see you tomorrow for the movie recommendation of the day. And we're back. So, well, that was definitely a long video, if ever there was one. This is probably the longest video on my site, but it probably won't be the last, because I am going to tackle other categories of the Academy Awards in this same style, except the next time, well, they're not going to be shorts. They're going to be a little bit longer because they will be made exclusively for this format. So, God help us all. But anyway, I would like to know, do you agree with the opinions that I shared, or do you disagree? Are there some Best Picture winners that you liked that I didn't, or are there some that you didn't like that I liked? I, of course, would love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.